Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well. We got here about 8 or 9 subjects to discuss. The first one is about the American troops in Ukraine that will go over there pretty soon. They will follow the same model, which is the mountain slope model that I was speaking so much about. You'll see. That's the first topic. American troops, and they started talking about it again. Why? They have to prepare the baboons to face the truth. Next one. Well, we have here a clear opposition from China and Russia of what's going on in Lebanon. You have Americans on one side, and you have the Americans, the Brits, and other vassal states. And on the other hand, you have Russia and China, that both of them support Lebanon, condemn Israeli attacks, and support Lebanese sovereignty and independence. That's China. About 4 articles on that one, maybe 3. In the same time, the Americans go and send military in the Mediterranean, East Mediterranean, in order to evacuate, ready to help evacuate US citizens from Lebanon. Do you think that's what it is? Well, I suspect it's something else. You have the Chinese and the Russians here. You got the Americans, obviously, yes sir, to the little thing over there in the Middle East, and they will possibly collide somewhere. Why? Because someone sits on someone's property. We're going to find out. I have 2 articles regarding the US sending more troops in the Middle East. Next, again, it's going to be the well video. Another African nation wants to join BRICS. What's that country's name? We're going to find out. I have 2 articles here. Another topic. The Poles have balls, as I always say. Sometimes the balls are used with brains, sometimes they're just used, nothing. So the Poles lately, you remember Vyacheslav, whatever his name is, the foreign minister of Sikorski, the foreign minister of Poland, went to Kiev, and Ukraine really grabbed or checked the guys in charge of Kiev's balls for a little while and said some things that the guys in charge of Ukraine did not like about Crimea. And right now, again, the Poles remind the Ukrainians of their Nazi past. They won't let that go. Why? They have territories, Ukrainian territories in the west of Ukraine that the Poles will get back. I said this and I will continue to say it. They have not only an eye on those territories, but all eyes on those territories. But how can you acquire them? Well, by having Ukraine somehow lose or putting the Ukrainians in a defensive. Negotiate, right? No, I don't think there's going to be any negotiation. It's going to be just an invasion under the disguise of protecting their minorities over there. What like the Russians are doing in East Ukraine. Russia today. Well, the Poles did it before in Czechoslovakia, if you remember. Russia set to gain access to Atlantic port. So that is, the Russians, the empire of evil, they are copying the master, which is the United States of America. Remember, the United States of America has about 740 military bases, deployments, whatever, around this globe. 740 or more. The Russians have about 2 or 3 maybe. Now that's Ukraine over there. Obviously, they probably have some bases, I think they do, in Belarus and in Syria. That's about it. They might have some Wagner groups in Africa, but not 740. Nevertheless, these guys will have a port access in a very important strategic position in the Atlantic Ocean. Not good for some, good for them. And we find out that in Ukraine's Pokrovsk, that's in Donetsk Oblast, where the Russians are pushing forward, some quietly waiting for Russian troops. and we're going to discuss that. I have two maps to show you the Russian continuous advancement towards Pokrovsk, and why would some Ukrainian residents wait for the Russians? I know exactly why, but let's go with the first one. Here it is. Ukrainska Pravda. Congressman Panetta. If we don't support Ukraine now, it will get a lot worse, maybe with our troops on the ground. Got that? So this guy, Jimmy Panetta, he is a retired naval intelligence officer. So this guy, seems like right now he's what? He's a congressman. Because that's the way it happens. First you serve certain things and then you're promoted to help those interests in acquiring more money and power. So what's going on over here? As I said, mountain slope model. You start slowly and then eventually you tell the baboons the reality, which is the decision has been already made years back. In case Russians do this, we take the file, all right, send them bullets, all right, send them juveniles, right? Then send them howitzers, then send them short-range missile systems, then mid-range, and then long-range missile systems to defend themselves. Then you send them armored vehicles, then you send them tanks, then you send them airplanes, fighter jets, then we send them troops. So under the disguise of volunteers, I think they are right there. So this is the way it went. So how did they always did it? To each and every step, topic that I mentioned, each and every weapon that I mentioned, they said, no, it's going to be an escalation, the Russians. And you had usually a retired something. A retired something that's going to say something. Why? Because usually these guys know shit. So they don't have really the authority to do anything. They're not in the active military duty, but they're retired. That means they know something. Or in the intelligence services. They come and say, well, maybe if we don't do this could happen. And everybody says, oh, well, interesting. And then from that one, it's picked up by news. And they start the panels discussing it. Oh, no, that's an escalation. No. And then the White House is just say, what? No, we're not going to do this. And then it goes back into the news and you got the experts and analysts, the analysts. Okay, those guys come and say, well, I think that's a good idea. And then goes back to the White House and said, well, we can discuss that. Well, but we're not certain. So you see, from not sending to sending, it's just, a little game they play. And eventually they're going to have an authorized person say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, we should. And eventually they say, yeah, we should. We do it. We made the decision. We change our mind. They did this with tanks, with airplanes, with everything they got. That's the game. Now, Panetta is the first imbecile activated to say, well, if we don't do this, we might have to send troops. So there's no other alternative, you see? We either send them and we go all the way until the Russians nuke the Ukrainians, they hope, right? Or, otherwise we have to send troops. And again, the Russians will use nukes to nuke them, not us, no, them, because we know the Russians will stop there. Again, be careful. So again, they will be worse than we have to. And that's another threat. How do you lead? By manipulating the cowards, lack of courage with threats. If you don't do this, I can protect, I can avoid, I can protect you from being hurt, but you have to give me the authority to do it. And the baboons are going, okay, it's going to get hurt, huh? Instead of using that, they use something else, which they don't have, which is balls. So let's go to the next article. And here you have Russia condemns large-scale military attacks by Israel. Right there, against Lebanon. Now, I don't know what kind of media you listen to, but if you listen to the media operatives here, the system operatives, as I call these imbeciles here in the free world, you're going to find out that one country is acting in self-defense and the other guys are just, clueless guys that are just bad and evil. Like the Russians, like Iranians, North Koreans, Chinese, Venezuelans, that kind of narrative. Again, these guys are just operatives. They maintain the system. So Russia condemns it. Any other country? China. Any other country? You wouldn't hear, and I know it's Spain also did it. That's a surprise to a certain extent. That's why Spain will be screwed. So Russia condemns large-scale military attacks by Israel against Lebanon, Zakharova said. Russia condemns the large-scale military attacks by Israel against Lebanon, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said on Tuesday. And I'm quoting, "We strongly condemn the large-scale military attacks against Lebanon. We should especially like to emphasize our principled position on the categorical inadmissibility of indiscriminate attacks, the victims of which are civilians," end quote, Zakharova said in a statement. "We call for an immediate cessation of hostilities. We would prevent further bloodshed." China firmly supports Lebanon in protecting sovereignty, security, Foreign Ministry said. Now, what is this? Go right there. Prevent, okay, here, victims of which are civilians. Remember, these guys told you in the West, because I read the garbage, they tell you that Israeli strike killed an important Hezbollah leader, commander, right? By shooting an apartment building, and 37 people were wounded and how many were dead. This is what Zakharova is talking about. So let's say someone wants to hit Zelensky while Zelensky is in Kiev, and they drop an atomic bomb over Kiev. Zelensky is dead, so are I don't know how many millions of Ukrainians. It doesn't make sense. But hey, Russia is not fighting in self-defense, therefore cannot break or violate international law. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure you know. All right, let's go to the next article. Sputnik. China firmly supports Lebanon in protecting sovereignty, security. Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Wu Hong? No, what am I? Wang Yi. I know that's what you are right here. Wang Yi. So what does it mean? Supports Lebanon in protecting sovereignty. Will you send the air defense systems? Will you send troops and security? What are you going to do? And I'm quoting Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China. China firmly supports Lebanon in protecting its sovereignty, security, and national dignity. No matter how the situation changes, we will always stand on the side of justice and our Arab brothers, including Lebanon. Oh, how about the other ones, the perpetual victims? So, you got China and you got Russia. And let's make a point here. China says it stands behind Lebanon after Israeli attacks. This is DPA International. The same thing. China firmly supports Lebanon in safeguarding its security. All right, just with words, I don't need them. You should do something else. And we see what the servant is doing over there in the Middle East. The servant being this big country, great country, used to be. US to send troops. This should have been it, but they give the baboons the justification and what the troops will do, according to them, to be ready to help. Again, help whom? And say, oh, just evacuate US citizens from Lebanon. I don't believe that squat. I don't believe that at all. They're just over there to, just evacuate, and we're going to send to Korea and to Vietnam, just some military advisors, okay? That's all. And they were just going to advise. They lied. They were actively engaged in the war with North Korea, or the guys in the north in Korea, and in Vietnam, the same thing. And right now, just help evacuate. Do you believe that? Good job. I don't. I think I should have the right to doubt when these guys are telling me anything. Verify. Believe, no, verify first. U.S. sending more troops to Middle East. Netanyahu warns Lebanese as Israel-Hezbollah conflict heightens. This is what I care here. The rest, they can, do whatever they do best. The problem is when they get us to do the dirty job for them, that's where I don't like it. And when I see that our elected officials are doing that in the name of sucking a big thing, then again, I can't support that. I don't care what those guys are doing over there. But that started probably with the Balfour Declaration. Remember that one? Remember? Are you familiar with it? Good. Now, all right, the Brits. Next one. Let's see who wants to join BRICS. Russia Today, another African nation interested in joining BRICS. Membership presents an opportunity to challenge the dominance of the dollar and euro, the Burkinabe Prime Minister said. Well, what do you think will happen here? A little regime change? No, first, as I always say, the Americans lost the ability to negotiate and be diplomatic since 1991. That's since they've been the only guys in charge of this planet, they thought. The problem is this doesn't stand still, that spins. And other countries are getting stronger, and this bully gets obviously challenged by other bullies. So in this case, obviously, the Americans dropped the negotiation and diplomacy, and they got the toolbox of their diplomacy with threats, blackmail, regime change, and bombardments. Look what they did to what? 5 countries already? 5 countries? Start with Yugoslavia, just a hint, in 1999. So thanks, but no thanks. So everybody now wants to join the other guys who are an alternative as protection, neighborhood protection from the drunk guy with a loaded shotgun to the other guys who sound, for some, a little bit more sane than the drunk. Can they get drunk? Yeah, sure, they can. Why? They're people. They're people. Unless you think that you're extraordinary, and that gets me into another psychological counseling session here. We have these ones, just to make sure that we don't use only this Russian media, that we're going to use this one. Burkina Faso announces intention to join BRICS. Well, you can say, so what? Well, little by little, those guys form their club of the very good. That's how I call it. Why? Because these guys are the plantation of Al Capone's with the vassal states. Let's move on. Let's see how the Poles have balls, and again they smack the Ukrainians. The problem is the Ukrainians will get shafted. Not the guys in charge of Ukraine, the Zelensky Steins, the Zhmyhal Steins, the Yermak Steins. No, it's going to be the proper Ukrainians. Unfortunately, not Umerov, the Tatar. Niet. Warsaw reminds Kiev of its Nazi past. Ukrainians served in Waffen SS. The Americans also, the Brits, I know for that for sure. The French served in Waffen SS units. And these guys were volunteers. If you remember, if you don't, I tell you. Remember when Adolf was surrounded by the Soviets in Berlin? I remember in about 30th of April, 29th of April, 30th of April, 1945. Remember? Do you know what troops were the last troops defending the Führer? They were the French troops. The Waffen SS, I think it was the Charlemagne unit, SS Waffen. So they were French defending the Führer in the bunker in April 30th when he blew his Kopf out. So not only that, look into this, this guy, and there were some Polish too. There were even Arabs were in an SS Waffen fighting as volunteers, bad as it is. But he is telling the Ukrainians like there were no Poles doing that. It's hypocrisy. If you just take your telephone, click, and you're gonna find out. So Ukrainians served in Waffen SS units, okay, and were complicit in something that happened during the World War II, which they call that thing. Andrzej Duda has said in an interview, okay, well, what's going on with this one? You didn't? They were not complicit. Well, when you are under occupation, I'm not trying to justify anything for the Poles or for anybody else. They should justify it on their own. But it's a little bit hypocritical, to say that, these guys cooperated with that and with that. I mean, remember when these guys say, well, the camps, I was about to say the summer camps. The camps over there, the concentration camps, were operated on Polish territory. Well, we were not involved with yeah, we're not involved. Why? Well, because we were under occupation, right? These guys, again, were under occupation. And then what did they want to do? They want to get rid of the Soviets. And there they banded with the other guys. Remember, your enemy, my enemy's enemy is my friend. And then when I get rid of those guys, I'm turn around and hit you out. I'm not justifying the Ukrainians. No, they do what they need to do for their self-interest. And sometimes, you look back into history from a comfortable armchair here with a, I don't know, how do you call that, cigar or some bourbon, and then you think, oh, yeah, those guys collaborated. The dynamic was of such intensity, and the goals and the changes were so swift over there. It's not like, oh my God, from here, yeah, man, you collaborated. Yeah, that's true, that guy collaborated. But why? And what would have happened after that? You have to look past that, and if you put it in the context, you realize that people were not really just, So let's see what this guy is saying. Ukraine has problems with its history, and Poland doesn't have, right? President Andrzej Duda has said, highlighting Kiev's collaboration with Nazi Germany and its involvement in the Holocaust during World War II. In an interview with Polsat News on Monday, the Polish leader said there were difficult topics between Warsaw and Kiev, referring to the Volyn massacre, the mass killing of ethnic Poles by Ukrainian nationalists during World War II. Well, that was a crime, that was a massacre, and I'm quoting, please remember that Ukrainians have many problems with their history. This is not only the problem of the Volyn massacre, but also service in SS units, collaboration with the authorities of the Third Reich, and participation in the Holocaust. Now, it says here militants of the Ukrainian insurgent army and the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists slaughtered up to 100,000 Poles between 1943 to 1945 in the regions of Volhynia and Eastern Galicia, which currently belong to Ukrainska Pravda. Right? Now, again, Warsaw has recognized the massacre as a genocide of Poles. Modern Ukraine has been celebrating the perpetrators as, quote-unquote, freedom fighters and national heroes, end quote. The OUN was led by Stepan Bandera, a notorious Nazi collaborator who is widely revered in modern Ukraine. Again, millions of Ukrainians served in Soviet Red Army during the war, but thousands of others fought on the German side under the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of SS known as Galicia Division. Well, the thing with this is, I don't like quoting the Bible, but I will. Remember when Mary Magdalene, the Lady of the Night, was caught and the guys were ready to stone her to death. Jesus Christ showed up and said, hey, the ones who have no sins should throw the first rock. And supposedly, reportedly, according to the Bible, they all had that moral strength to say, yes, man, I'm not, yeah. So they all turn around and say, fuck you, and boom. They didn't do that. They said, oh my God, yes, I have sins. And they understood that they had. That's very inhumane. Non-human. And people will say, who the hell are you? Screw you. Boom, boom, boom. But that's how the Bible, says. So in this case, let's use that one. And still the Poles are Catholic. And they will understand hypocrisy. And hypocrisy, and how is that? The little thing in your eye and the beam, the little thing in his eye and the beam in yours. All right, I'm not saying the Poles have the beam, but you have to understand what happened in Munich with the Germans and Poles, Great Britain and France, right? And you have to understand when the Germans got their Sudetenland, which is in Czechoslovakia, the Poles invaded and took parts of Czechoslovakia. So because there was a little understanding between Poland and Germany, Nazi Germany. So who collaborated? The Poles did to the Czechs or Czechoslovakia, not the Czechs because I don't want to ignore the Slovakians, to Czechoslovakia what Nazi Germany and the evil Soviets led by the Georgian, not the Russian, Stalin did to them. They partitioned it together. So it's kind of like hypocritical. That's why the big should be a little bit smaller. I'm not saying they are wrong in what they're saying about the SS Waffen, but there were some Poles as well. There were Romanians too. All right, just so you know. And that's about it. All right, let's move to the next one. The goal of this kind of conversation right here with this guy is this right here. This is Ukraine. It is part of Ukraine. And at one point, this is Poland here. This is Belarus. At one point, remember, I think it was in the 17th century and 18th century, Poland and Lithuania had a commonwealth together. They united, and they had this part right here. All this until the Black Sea belonged right here. All this belonged to Poland and Lithuania, and now it doesn't. There are other Polish minority here living in this area, and I guarantee you. I mean, let's predict when the Russians are gonna advance here. I guarantee you, these guys, I give you 99.9%, these guys will go in here and they'll occupy as much territory to meet the Russians in the middle, like the Soviets and the Germans did in Second World War, and they did in Czechoslovakia, right here. All right, so they will do, and under the justification that they will protect the Ukrainians and their minority from the Russians taking over and destroying everything. And everybody in the world will be given this narrative, including Americans who would say, yes, that makes sense. We did this in Mexico. Remember Texas? We had to protect our people in Texas. Therefore, let's go. So when you talk about the Sudetenland by the Nazis, think about many other things. When you think about the Ribbentrop-Molotov secret pact between Stalin and Adolf, remember that happened before by the guys who are way ahead of many, many others, which are the Al Capones. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Let's see what the Russians are doing. And they took their gloves off with this Ukraine garbage, and they are not playing ball, that's why I think, with the Americans anymore. Russia set to gain access to Atlantic port media. Moscow reportedly plans to ratify an agreement on military cooperation with an island nation in the Gulf of Guinea. Russia is poised to gain access to a naval port in the Atlantic Ocean through a bilateral military cooperation agreement with the island nation of Sao Tome and Principe. Now, sorry if I obviously missed that, but mispronounced that. Located off the west coast of Africa. I will show you. A bill on the issue has been approved by a Russian government commission on legislative activity. The draft treaty will be put to a vote in the State Duma, Russia's lower house of the parliament. The first deputy chairman of Duma committee explained that ratifying the pact will allow Russian ships to be stationed in the Gulf of Guinea. Right? Today, a large number of ports where our ships could come in for refueling are closed. Therefore, opportunities to find friendly ports significantly facilitate the activities of our fleet. Where is that located? I will show you. Here is the map. So this is Africa. And here is the Gulf of Guinea, right here. Gulf of Guinea. And this is Sao Tome and Principe. All right. I don't care if I mispronounce it or not, you know it's right here. So here is where the Russians will be located. Now remember that they are also in Niger, Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso. All these guys right here are a little bit on the Russian side, let's put it mildly. So on the global stage, here is where they're going to be located. Now, they can't compete with Big Daddy here, with the United States of America, which has 740 plus military bases around the world, but that's a success. And this happened only because the Russians told the baboons here, hey, don't do it in Ukraine. You can't say anything because NATO, if the country wants not to be neutral anymore after the coup d'etat organized by agencies and, how do you call it? Bureaus. Bureaus, then obviously we just don't care. The Russians said, okay. They went into Africa. They're winning in Africa. They kicked these guys out. In Asia, the same way. In Latin America, the same way. They got Argentina. That's all they got over there with that imbecile Milei. Why? He's a pimp. He's going to have Argentina as a customer. I'm sorry, as a product for the customers north. That's what Milei is. And he wants to be Jewish. All right, let's find out what's going on in Pokrovsk. Here it is. Agence France Presse, in Ukraine's Pokrovsk, some quietly waiting for Russian troops. Okay, where's Pokrovsk? This is the map of Ukraine. This is Donetsk Oblast in this area. This is how far the Russians got with their offensive. Pokrovsk is here. The Russians call it Krasnoarmeysk. Krasnoarmeysk. This is where the Russians are. So these guys are waiting for the summer. Chris Ria song. Here is Pokrovsk again, by the name given by the right here, the Ukrainians. So they are very close. So what are they doing in Pokrovsk? They're waiting for the Russians. The Ukrainians ordered evacuation of the city. Some of them don't want to evacuate. Why is that? Well, let's see. Some people might wait for the Russians because they look at them as liberators, not as oppressors and okay. Some of them don't want to be with Zelensky Steins on the other side. Some people maybe are too old. Some people say, you know what, screw you guys. But it seems like they're waiting for the Russians to appear. That tells me they are advancing. And that's according to Agence France Presse, which never lies. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.